The 11th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Kathy Wyatt.
While there are no guarantees, taking a proactive approach to your overall health and wellness can increase your chances of living a longer, more productive life. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, women's health. Joining us today to talk about it are Dr. Sarah Chadha, Chair of the Nebraska Medical Association's section of Women's Health. Dr. Chadha is an OBGYN. Dr. Jennifer Huberty, whose focus is physical activity in health promotion at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And Jan Moore, a 25-year-old Omaha woman recently diagnosed with breast cancer. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Chadha, if we could start with you, just kind of paint a picture, if you will, of the overall health and wellness for women here in the state of Nebraska.
Well, compared to the rest of the country, we're a little bit behind as far as exercise. We're a little bit more overweight. And then as far as annual health screening for women, we're a little bit behind on getting our annual pap smears and our mammograms and clinical breast exams and all of that.
Okay, and Dr. Huberty, we're hearing a little bit behind. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on nationwide when it comes to women's health.
Well, nationwide there is an obesity epidemic. You know, people aren't regularly participating in physical activity, and healthy eating doesn't happen as much as we'd like it to. The trends are usually a little bit better in some of the Southwest states, actually. They are a little bit healthier. Some of the eastern states a little bit healthier, but generally speaking, you know, there's an obesity epidemic for a reason.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, but I first want to go back to Dr. Chadha to talk to us a little bit. You're an OBGYN. Mm-hmm. What types of, if we can narrow the focus just for a minute, what types of problems and concerns are you seeing in your office on a daily basis?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I do is see women for routine physical exams. And so we do pap smears, I teach self-breast exams, I order mammograms for women, and then we talk about kind of annual, do a health maintenance. So, you know, are they exercising? Are they getting the calcium they need? We check cholesterol to see how are they doing as far as their diet goes. Do they have a family history of different diseases that we need to do more testing for or keep a closer eye on them about? We do some education about exercise and diet and whatever we can to try to improve women's health.
And what are you finding in your particular office that do seem to be the stumbling blocks, and do you have any kind of theory as to why that is continuing to happen?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that for women we often put our health care second to the care of our family or our jobs. We're more likely to do things for other people than for ourselves. So I think first of all, just getting rid of that mental block that I need to care for everybody before I take care of myself is an important thing. For many women, they'll put exercise and diet second. They'll, you know, for soccer moms, for example, they'll be transporting their children, so they'll pick up fast food on the way, or they'll be sitting in the car waiting for a game to get done, or sitting on the sidelines, and so they put their own exercise program second to the needs of their family.
Okay, and that is a pretty typical scenario or picture to paint. You know, I guess you brought up the soccer moms, and there are a lot of folks out there who are trying to get from point A to point B in a relatively short amount of time, and there isn't, I guess, that focus or emphasis on, especially sitting down as a family to eat dinner anymore. Everybody is in a hurry. What types of advice would you give those moms that are getting ready to get in the van right now and go and run for the rest of the day? What would you say to them as far as, you know, yeah, the fast food's available. What alternatives that would be quick and easy and affordable? What types of suggestions would you make just to that group of people?
Well, one of the things that we talk about is that what they do sets an example for their children. And so if they are relying more on fast food or not exercising, then that teaches their children that adults don't necessarily need to eat well or take the time to exercise. So we focus on that. But then as far as healthy eating goes, there are many things that you can do that are simple. If you can go to the grocery store, once a week, you can buy many fruits and vegetables. Many things come in small packages that are easy to throw into a cooler in the morning before you go. And probably the healthier foods are things that are more simple to prepare anyway. Also, even many fast food restaurants now are offering healthier choices. And so I think if they just pay attention to the fact, okay, for example, I need to get at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I'm going to make this choice when I'm out eating food that I'm buying at a restaurant, as opposed to, I'm eating fast food, I'm going to have a hamburger and French fries.
Okay.
So.
And there is absolutely something to be said for taking that advice, and you really never know what life is going to deal to you. You want to be as proactive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Jan, I know you have a story that you were coming in willing to share with all of us. Can you talk about your situation now?
Absolutely. Until this day, I still remember my doctor calling me up saying, I wish life isn't fair for you. And I knew exactly what he meant when he said that, because I was supposed to get my results the next day and he called a day early. And in my mind, I said, I have breast cancer. And immediately, you choke up, your eyes start watering, and he said, you'll be fine. You did a good job, even though you didn't come in early. 3 months ago would have been better than now, but it was a low grade, it was a DCIS, and he said that we can take care of this. We need to get the right treatments for you. And I just, the first 24 to 48 hours, I was mad, I was sad, I was angry, I was crying, but I woke up and I said, I can't do this. I need to change something negative into a positive thing. I have a 5-year-old son who looks up to me, who every morning is saying, Mom, are you ready to play? And I couldn't bear to just sit there and cry all day long. So I decided to take a proactive and said, I'm just going to beat this. I'm not going to let cancer control me. I'm going to control the cancer. I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to go and get the surgery done and do all the treatments. And I'm just going to fight it. And I think a lot of people my age, we kind of think back, we're 25 years old. We can't get cancer. No. And especially, I don't have any family history of it. So my second thought was, it'll go away. That lump will eventually go away. And it didn't. It led to another lump, and that's a big red flag. You find a lump, and I think every young woman now should take, a proactive and do a self-breast exam every month, just to be sure, because cancer, unfortunately, does not discriminate. Whether you're young, you're old, what race you are, it'll just come. And when it hits you, it's just a hard hit to take home, especially going through it with my son and my husband, seeing me going through a lot the last couple of years.
I think your story is, and thank you for sharing that, I think it's a great example of how this really can happen to anyone. You had mentioned early in your response that you thought you had done all the right things. Talk to us about what you believe to be all the right things heading into this.
All the right things, I'm pretty active. I exercise 3 times a day. I go out and we run, me and my husband walk around the neighborhood. We try to eat right. And I do self-breast exam. Every time I'm in the shower, I make sure that, I'm checking. But when stress, holidays come along, you don't have that time to just be checking it every time you take a shower, and you miss it. And then finally, when there is a lump there, you think twice. You always in the back of your mind, oh, it can't be cancer. I'm too young. And I think a lot of people think that. And they need to realize you're never too young to get cancer. Cancer can happen at any time.
Now, you mentioned your husband and your 5-year-old. Who else has been with you along the way with this journey?
This journey has been actually amazing. I've met wonderful ladies. I joined the Susan G. Komen Foundation, and they have been the best support. They have, I went to a luncheon on August 2nd, and it kind of gave me this assurance that, wow, look at all these ladies. If they can do it, I can do it. It gave me I look at life, that life still can move forward. You can go on. I can still be that mom. I can still be that soccer mom where I can still go to his practice. And so I just, instead of being negative all the time, you kind of have to look in the positive way. If I can inspire somebody out there to do a regular based self-breast exam, then I think we've already beat cancer before cancer beats us. So.
And absolutely proof that no one needs to go through this alone. I think oftentimes when
Absolutely.
we get into a situation that is uncomfortable and frightening for us, we tend to withdraw. And
Mhm.
you're talking about really good outlets for
Yes.
women to plug into, and we appreciate very much you sharing that with us. Now,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Chadha, she did mention she's doing the right things. Early detection, obviously, very key. Talk more about the early detection.
Well, it is important for women when they hit 20 to start doing clinical or self-breast exams, at least monthly. I mean, I think the more often you do it, I'm sure the better, but at least monthly. And that's something that we teach young women in our office how to do and how to do it correctly. Also on the Susan G. Komen website, they describe how to do self-breast exams,
Absolutely.
for example. The other thing is that we review history. So if there's a family history, now Jan did not have a family history of cancer, but especially in women that do have a family history, some types of cancer run in the family. And so there's gene testing we can do to try to determine, is this something that runs in the family, and should we begin screening mammograms much sooner than we usually would. For most women, we start mammograms either every year or every other year, starting at the age of 40. And then that should continue on throughout the rest of their lifespan. So, and then coming in and getting a clinical breast exam at least every year or 2 years is a very important thing as well.
Okay, so Dr. Huberty, we have a physician here talking to us about what we're supposed to be doing. We have Jan sitting with us telling us her story, and yet there are still people watching this show. We're going to say, that just isn't going to happen to me, and they are not necessarily inclined to take that proactive approach. Why is that? What's it going to take for us to get people to understand how critical this really is?
Well, I think in terms of practicing health behaviors such as physical activity, I think what Dr. Chadha was saying about the barrier of taking care of our families first before we take care of ourselves. It's very true. I see it all the time in the studies, and the women that I work with, they value their families and their jobs almost more than they value themselves, and they tend to prioritize for all these other things before taking care of themselves. And the mentality is that I have to take care of them first. But what they don't understand is that if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be there to take care of everybody else. And I think in addition to that, there's a great amount of guilt when a woman starts to make that change into practicing health behaviors for herself. There's that, okay, I'm not doing this that I need to do for work, and I'm not doing this what I could be doing for my child. And quite often it's really not as bad as they perceive it in their head in terms of the guilt. So when I work with women, I try to talk to them about feeling guilty and letting them know that it's almost a choice. It is a choice to feel guilty, and that activity and healthy behaviors can be practiced with your family. For example, you can walk with your partner or your spouse. You can make healthy eating part of a family thing that you do together, washing vegetables, cutting vegetables, making dinner, those types of things. So, that helps. The other thing I think is that women need support systems. And, that's been said with the Susan G. Komen Foundation. That's a great resource. And there's others out there. And I think women tend to just sit back and wait for that social support to come. So if another woman says to a woman, would you like to go walking? Sure, I'll go walking. But in women specifically that we've seen in our studies, those that are not physically active regularly, they don't go and get the support that they need on their own. They wait for it. And those that are regularly active know that if social support is not there, they do whatever it takes to find it. So they're accessing support more aggressively than someone who's not practicing those health behaviors.
And you said that there are actually 5 components to someone's overall health and wellness. And we have a graphic that we're going to put up that will show those 5 components. And I think you take those and couple that with building your support systems, and you really do have a winning combination. Do you mind walking through those for us and then maybe just saying a little bit about each one?
We've talked a lot about the components of health and wellness with physical, so we're talking about eating and exercising. And spiritual can be anything from going to church to meditating. Social is that support, that's those social relationships that make a large part of our health and wellness. The more supported we are in those social relationships that we have that are positive, the better health we're going to have. And also we need an intellectual part of health and wellness. In other words, education and knowledge and resources, those types of things that help us to be healthier because we have that. And then our emotional wellness is very important, basically how we feel about ourselves and internally more than externally, I would say.
And Jan, looking at those, what are your comments? What are you thinking as you're listening to Dr. Chadha and Dr. Huberty? What's going through your mind at this point?
What's going through my mind? A lot is going through my mind. I think they've hit everything. I think a lot of times, we do want to go to the fast food restaurant because it's so much easier. A hamburger and some apples for my son is faster than running home, cooking. I think we need to have a guilty conscience back there that it is a choice. You have to take care of yourself before you take care of the family. I've worked, I'd rather sometimes work more hours so we can go on a nice vacation and forgotten about to take care of myself sometimes. And now it's given me an opportunity to step back, even though it's a little too late. But I realize that working myself overload doesn't help. You need to look back at yourself and see what you're doing. You need to concentrate that you are important. Not just my husband, not just my son, but myself. I got to take care of my overall health.
Okay. And Dr. Huberty, your whole life really is devoted to the promotion of health and wellness. And you recently worked on a study, or you're in the midst of research that links physical activity with a woman's self-esteem. And I'm very curious about this. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're finding here?
Sure. Well, I believe that a lot of what we know in the literature and research shows us that if we're physically active, then we'll feel better about ourselves. And women often report that. After I'm physically active and I'm regularly doing this, I start to feel good about myself, and I lose weight, and those types of things. But one of the biggest problems women have, actually men too, is maintaining this physical activity. And so I believe that if you provide a foundation with self-esteem and self-worth before you intervene with physical activity, then a woman is more likely to maintain that. Rather than doing the physical activity first, that becomes the reason. The physical activity doesn't feed the self-efficacy. The self-efficacy or the self-esteem has to feed the physical activity. So what I did is I had women that went through an intervention that was 12 weeks long, and we showed them different types of exercises, and we took them through some education behavioral sessions. And then we followed up with them 1 year later. And so we interviewed all the women, so they had not talked to me or any of our researchers for about a year. And we found that the women that were adhering to physical activity, maintaining it after 1 year, they reported higher values of themselves. They used the word self-worth. They said, I feel better about myself, I feel better about my self-worth. And the women that weren't adhering didn't have that same feeling about themselves. And so now what I'm doing is research to work on increasing self-worth in women and encouraging physical activity behaviors alongside that, but it's actually a book club. It's called Women Bound to Be Active, and women meet weekly and we read books. It's a confidential book list, and we read books related to health behavior, but there are fiction books, there's nonfiction books, and so we're teaching the concepts, educating knowledge about physical activity. We're discussing what's going on with these books, how they pertain to our lives, and so we're improving self-worth and then hoping to increase physical activity behaviors. And actually, one of the studies was just published this month, and we did see in the first study an increase in self-worth and physical activity in these women. So we just followed up with the women who went through the first book club, and we're analyzing those results now, so it'll be interesting to see what they're doing after participation in just the education self-worth of the book club. It'll be very interesting to see.
And I want to back up for a minute, and I want you to talk specifically to the women out there who are watching and saying, you know what, Dr. Huberty, that's all fine and good, and that sounds great, and you know what, I like your theory, I think it probably has a leg to stand on, but how on earth am I going to make that transition in my life the way my current lifestyle is, running to soccer, running to here, there, everywhere. And let's face it, to say that you need to eat right is a lot different than actually eating right. So for those people who really, their hearts are in the right place and they want to make a change, what would you tell that group of women?
Join the book club. Actually, really, because what we're doing is we are taking specific barriers that women have, specific to being a woman and being caretakers and having full-time jobs and maybe having children at home. We are overcoming all those barriers as a group, and we are taking them one at a time and helping women work through those. We're also changing perception, because a lot of times women also feel this pressure to be a certain way in terms of what they need to look like and appear like. So a woman has a hard time grasping some self-esteem about being a size 14 or about a size 16. And quite honestly, if you're not at risk for chronic disease, then there's no reason why you can't be a size 14 or a size 16 and embrace that. You just have to be practicing health behaviors. So we really try to focus on quality of life versus weight. In other words, you know, changing the perception of body image and those types of things. So we really are getting into the meat, you know, down and dirty about what are women struggling with? How do we overcome life events and maintain our healthy behaviors? And I'm not talking about running a marathon, although some women do. And I'm not talking about joining a gym and being on a Stairmaster every day for 45 minutes. I'm talking about physical activity for our quality of life and our health. So there's a big difference.
What are the most common stories or that link that you're hearing with these people who are approaching you to be a part of what it is that you're doing?
Well, I think, it's geared for these women, but it's women that have struggled with this before. So it's almost like they're on and off the wagon of physical activity and health behaviors, if you will. So, you know, it's a woman that says, hey, I've tried to do this so many times, and I know I'm supposed to eat right, and I know I'm supposed to be active, and I know, but I just can't do it. And those are the women that we're targeting. There's about 25% of women who are completely sedentary, do absolutely nothing. There's about 60% of women that go back and forth, start and stop behaviors related to physical activity. And then there's a good 15% that are active all the time, no matter what, rain, sleet, or snow. They're always active. And so we're really focusing on that 60% of the women that are on that teeter-totter. And they can't, you know, either fully get committed or, so that's really what we're targeting.
And for those people watching, we are going to put up information at the end of the show so that if they do want to be a part of what it is that you're doing, they can certainly log on and find out more about it. And really for those who aren't able to do that, we'll put up information at the end and they can make a phone call and start to get you know, some help today with all of that.
There is a website that women can go to, and this is going to be a national program, and we'll be piloting that in January. So.
Okay, and Dr. Chadha, jump in here. You're talking a lot. We're hearing a lot of stories. Absolutely, I'm sure something that you can relate with your patients and so forth. Any comments, any additions to what Dr. Huberty has said?
I think it's important for women to understand that so much of our different health issues can be related to our level of activity and what we eat. And so we really do, you know, even if you think you don't have control over your irregular periods or your arthritis or other problems, we do. I mean, what we eat and how much we are active and exercise really affects our overall health. People that are overweight and more sedentary, you know, the two things that are most responsible for the diseases that we get in our state, you know, heart disease and cancer are related to activity. Now, that's not true for Jan. She said she had a very active lifestyle before, but for most of us, really, we have power to make ourselves healthier. So just making healthy choices and changing the way we live will really make a difference for our overall health and well-being.
Absolutely, thank you. And Jan, you know, we'll go back to your story here, and for those viewers now who are watching who may have just learned that they have cancer, who may suspect that they have cancer, or who've been battling it for quite some time. Talk to those women who are out there watching now from where you sit.
I think as a survivor, I think we know what we have to do to survive. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to get as much rest as we need. Our body usually gives a sign, you know, when you're tired, be tired. Don't overdo yourself, you know. Take a nap during the day if you need to. And if you do suspect that you have a lump in your breast, call your doctor. There's no way you should wait to make it worse than it is. You could start out small, but if you just let it sit there, it could spread, and you don't know where it could go next in your body. And I think most of all, I think every woman knows their body. When something's wrong, there's always signs that's saying, you know, it's time to call your doctor. So I think we just need to be proactive. Like they're saying, you have to be proactive in your life and take care of yourself.
And the time is now, because from what I understand, this does not go away as you age. This is only going to complicate things more as you age. All the issues, Dr. Huberty and Dr. Chadha, that you've talked about today aren't going to get any easier. They aren't going to get any better, and your lifespan certainly isn't going to benefit as a result. So again, for those people who are maybe teetering with all this, what piece of advice in just the very short time that we have left would you tell them to help get them over? And we just have a few seconds. Dr. Huberty?
Geez, you know, I just think you just got to make the choice and do it. I mean, stop making excuses and start moving.
Okay, Dr. Chadha, a few seconds.
And I don't think you're ever going to get more time in life. I mean, there are always things that'll keep you busy, so you have to make the active decision that, yes, I'm going to make my health a priority.
Excellent. Okay, and we do have a graphic that has more information for the folks who are viewing at home. And here it is, Center for Disease Control, www.cdc.gov. And then, of course, we talked about the Susan G. Komen for the Cure, www.komennebraska.org, and there's that phone number. And Dr. Huberty's study, there is the website for that, 402-554-3395. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and expertise
Thank you.
today
Thank
and your
you.
story. Thanks to you
Thank
too,
you.
and we'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. The 11th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.